Hi folks, Scott here, and this is the wrap for Wednesday, September 11th. First, let me just say God bless America and those families who lost loved ones on this terrible day 12 years ago. And I'd like to also God bless and call out all of the soldiers and sailors and servicemen of all free countries around the world who have done everything and done such a remarkable job to protect the rest of us over these past 12 years. I think all things considered, we've been remarkably safe, and for that, I'm certainly appreciative, of my family is, and I'm sure you are as well. All right, let's talk about today. We actually powered higher today, real strong momentum to the upside. After two consecutive unfilled up gaps denoted by these white lines, we gapped down and then closed higher. So I thought it'd be interesting to show you the results of fading gaps after at least a 20-day high close, which is what this is. This was about 20 days of action, and I counted them to be sure. A 20-day high close that was preceded by an unfilled up gap. Just to see if that gives us any insight into whether a short or long bias may be preferred on the subsequent day. And let me use Gap Trader, my back testing tool. And there you go. Now this is only looking at those scenarios above the 200-day moving average historically and using an end-of-day stop, which is not what I use nor recommend, but it's a good place to start your analysis. And you can see at a glance, odds are above average by about 5 percentage points of gap fill tomorrow. About a 75% chance of gap fill regardless of gap direction. Pretty good in both directions. And the average winner's been a little bit bigger and the average loser's been a little bit shorter. Correction, smaller for the short size. So definitely get a little bit stretched to the upside, more likely to have a better setup if we gap up in this scenario historically than if we gap down. But still, this is definitely enough to keep me attracted and interested to the setup. As always, I will defer to our gap guides and our TGP, today's gap play worksheet, before I make my final decision. But I thought you might find this helpful for this somewhat unique pattern. All right, let me show you what we posted last night in the worksheet. It's posted around 6 or so. Actually, you'll be getting an email next day or two, to members will at least, that this worksheet is being fully automated and will be posted by 6:15 or 6:30 p.m. Eastern time each day, just at the same time we do the gap guides and the price guides each day. And going into today, you can see a gap down was slightly attractive. Now there are two zones that comprise this close to low opening area after an update. It's the UCO zone and the UOL zone. You can look at our gap zone map on our home page. It's centered actually on our home page. Check out the gap zone map and you'll see what I mean. But slightly attractive, not quite meeting my criteria, but in this case you have to sort of peel the onion back and look at the individual zones in play, and I'll show you those very quickly. Up gap after an unfilled up gap was a unique pattern in play for the second day in a row. That was positive. And let's see, for down gaps, and it was neutral after an NR7 day under similar market conditions. Let me show you the gap guides. Most of the indices gap down in this UCO zone. It was a small gap down, and it was a really good setup in the ES. See the weighted average here for the average of my three systems. Good setup. I'm looking for 61.3, clearly met it in the ES. YM actually gapped up, so it really wasn't in play today. That was a problem I had. NASDAQ gapped down here in the DL zone, so it was behaving badly. And then the Russell was neutral. Looking at the ETFs, whoops. Spider confirmed the setup. Diamonds again were gapping up. Qs again were gapping down. And Russell is neutral. So slightly attractive setup, I guess you could argue, just from the nature of the size of the gap in itself was a positive. Let me show you my comments. Last night's video showed two consecutive unfilled up gaps was a big positive. Expect consolidation in the morning. And there were several other positives, fading down gaps today too. A heat gap, that's a down gap above the high of 2 days ago, and so on. So overall, a little bit like threading a needle, and I was willing to try, and this is what I said, I'll go long the ES if it opens down in the UCO zone with at least a point of opportunity. So I only had a 1 point window of opportunity, 1680.5 to 1681.5, and I wanted the YM to open down to help counter the risk of the fact that the NASDAQ was gapping down in the DL zone, which is not shown here, but it was a weaker setup. And I was using my half size position because of that and try to hold some for the extended target. I had some good end of day data favoring a higher close today. And let me show you the price action. That's the ES. So there's a small gap down. It's a white dotted line underneath this blue line. A little bit hard to see there. There's the Russell. NASDAQ is over here. It did not quite fill its gap, but it gave it a shot. And the YM, which trended to the upside all day. And I hear it's going to become even more volatile because they're adding some higher priced instruments into the Dow and getting rid of some lower priced ones. So that's going to add volatility since it's a price. In fact, I have no problem saying it's a flawed index. It's a price weighted, not market cap weighted index. So it's going to start doing more of its own thing, I believe, or I fear, which doesn't really impact me directly. Just a reminder to those of you who do trade it, be careful. So these small gaps down, filled quickly, then rolled over, took some heat. I see pretty much everything took a little heat except for, again, the Dow just behaved badly. 15-minute range guides favored the high fade slightly. I passed on it, and it would have been very hard to catch it. It did trade and test this pink line and then sold off and hit the target precisely. So you would have had a little bit of luck of draw to get filled on the entry and the exit. So no big deal on that. The low fade was a good setup, and let me show you that. For the first hour guides, I'm looking for 55 and 1.1, checking the ES for my weighted average, checking the YM, neutral in the NASDAQ, and check for the Russell. So 3 of the 4 futures, looking at the ETFs, more the same. That doesn't quite meet my profit factor criteria for the spider, but call that a half check. Another half check for the diamonds, check for the Qs, and neutral for the Russell. So not a bad setup, and after an unfilled up gap and closing above the highs of 2 days ago, you just expect buyers to show up no matter how weak the market internals are. I talked about that actually quite at length. You need to ignore market internals because they were really weak this morning, but the bullish momentum will take over. Well, I set up my trade to go long at 1678, and I set up, I don't know, 10 seconds after it traded there, and I was just a tad too slow, and it never came all the way back, which was some rotten luck. Now I did hear from some folks that got filled in this consolidation because they like this bullish bar, and they got filled around 79. I didn't want to chase, and in retrospect, hindsight's always 20/20. Maybe I should have, because this is a scenario where I will sometimes chase. If you go back through my videos, you'll occasionally hear about me getting long around the mid-morning lows on the day following an unfilled up gap or a big trend day to the upside. So I just missed the move, unfortunately. We showed there was a 67% chance of closing higher today by an average of 7 points from the open, and today we opened at 80.75. We'll call that 81 plus 7 is 88, almost dead on. I mean, that's just a little bit of random luck, but it was historical data was a good guide today, and some folks did treat this like a gotcha. I saw it in a trading room, and I heard from a gentleman as well. Good thinking. I didn't really think to do that because we're so stretched. Their premise being folks may be still stuck short, and they were right. Nice little pop into the close. So quiet day for me, and we'll see what tomorrow brings us. And there you go. That is the wrap for Wednesday, September 11th. Have a good night.